Hello everyone, I'm Anita with AnitaByDesign.com and welcome back to the beginner sewing course. We're starting project number 3 today. I hope you guys have enjoyed projects number 1 and 2 if you have been able to follow along. If not, you can just take your time and get to it whenever you can. For those of you who are just joining me, just to note, what we're doing today will require skills that we have already covered in projects number 1 and 2 in detail. So some of the things I will be doing here today, if you're new to sewing, you may not understand what I'm talking about, so I do suggest that you go back and take a look at those tutorials before starting this one so that you can follow along. Okay, so we are making our third skirt and we're doing a straight skirt and we're using Butterick 5466. So go ahead and take your hip measurement like we did in project number 2 and you will use that hip measurement to purchase your skirt, unless your waist measurement is larger than your hip measurement. If that's the case, then you will use your waist measurement to purchase your pattern. So go ahead and get your pattern. You're going to need your fabric, and you can follow the suggestions on the back of the pattern envelope to choose which type of fabric you're going to use, or something similar to what they have listed. And make sure you pre-treat your fabric and get it all ready for sewing. You're going to need an invisible zipper. Again, we're installing an invisible zipper like we did in project number 2, but this time I'm going to use the invisible zipper foot so that you can see how that works. You will need your fabric scissors, your paper scissors, your little nippers or your thread scissors at the sewing machine, your seam ripper, because we will be ripping the basting stitches when we get ready to install our invisible zipper, or in case you make mistakes, you're going to need that. Your seam gauge, your tracing wheel and tracing paper, a thread in the coordinating color for the fabric that you choose. I'm going to be using, this time I'm using a light fabric, so I'm going to be using a darker thread so that you guys can see the stitches as we're going along. You will need straight pins, or you can use the metal washers as pattern weights. And then the new, don't forget your tape measure so that you can measure your pattern pieces to make sure that that grain line arrow is matching up with the grain of your skirt, of your pattern pieces. And the new product that we're introducing today is interfacing, and you're going to be purchasing fusible interfacing, and that's an iron-on interfacing. So when you go to the fabric store, and the instruction or the it's listed on the back of your pattern envelope under the tools or supplies that you're going to need to complete this skirt, the interfacing is listed as far as how much you will need. So follow the instructions. And we're making, I forgot to mention, we're making skirt A. Yes, we're making skirt A. So follow the guidelines and instructions and notions that you need for skirt A. And then just ask someone in the sewing at the fabric store for fusible interfacing, and you'll need to get an interfacing that matches the weight of the fabric that you'll be using. So if you're getting a lightweight fabric, then you're going to need a lightweight fusible interfacing, and vice versa. If you're using a heavyweight fabric, then get a heavier interfacing. And someone at the fabric store should be able to help you. If you will be purchasing online, just make sure you purchase the appropriate weight of interfacing for your fabric. Okay, and that's all we're going to need to get started. So go ahead and pick up your pattern, get your fabric, and then meet me back here. I'm going to show you the layouts for cutting out this skirt. Let's get started. Let's talk about our pattern layout. So if you are cutting on, or if you are using the layout for a 45-inch fabric for sizes 8 or 10, or if you're using the layout for a 60-inch width fabric, then your layout is going to be like the one that you see here on the table. I have one fold, and then both selvages are meeting each other. So the right side of the fabric is facing up, and then it's folded on over onto itself. And then you're going to take your pattern piece, number 1, and it's going to be placed right side facing down onto the fabric with this edge on the fold, and you'll see the center fold arrow on your pattern piece. So You'll place that one there, and then piece number 2 is placed with the right side facing up. Now, if you are cutting a 45-inch width for sizes 12 and up, then your layout is going to be different. You're going to open out your fabric or lay your fabric with the right side facing up, and then you're going to take the fabric and fold it over on itself, but not all the way to the edge of the selvage, just enough to fit pattern piece number 1. And again, you're going to place it face down and just enough fabric to fit that piece. So same thing. And then you're going to place pattern piece number 2 on the other side, and just follow the diagram for your layout, and they will instruct you on, where to place the pieces and whether to place it right side up or wrong side up. So go ahead and follow your guidelines. After you have finished cutting your pieces, you're going to trace or transfer your markings from the pattern onto the fabric. And today you're learning how to sew darts. So you will notice on the 2 pattern pieces, the front and the back, there are these triangles at the top near the waistline. And you're going to transfer those markings the same way you would any other markings. But for me, I'm going to be using my tracing wheel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my tracing paper on the bottom and top of my fabric, and I'm going to trace those triangles, and then at the end I'm going to make a little line at the end of each dart. These lines are called dart legs, and the point here is called a dart point. So trace the legs and then put a little line at the point, and that little line is going to be an indicator for us as to where we need to stop sewing when we're sewing the dart into the skirt. So go ahead and do that, and then you're going to cut your facing pieces, numbers 3 and 4, out of interfacing. So I want to show you that. Now, interfacing, the reason we use interfacing is to build in body in an area where it needs it, or to give the garment a little bit more stiffness. And for this skirt, we're going to apply interfacing onto the facing pieces of the skirt, which are going to be on the inside of our skirt in the waist area. Now, this skirt doesn't have a waistband, so the interfacing pieces are what's going to give it its stiffness. And ironing the interfacing onto those fabric pieces is what helps to give it the body that it needs. So you're going to take your interfacing. I'm going to place it on top of this fabric so you can see it instead of against the white table. Okay, your interfacing has a smooth side and it has a textured side. The textured side is the side where all of the glue is on, and this is the side that's going to be ironed onto the fabric piece. So with the textured side facing up, go ahead and fold the fabric or the interfacing over onto itself, and then you're going to place your pattern pieces according to the layout guidelines, and follow the grain line arrow on piece number 4 to make sure you get that lined up properly. And on one layout, it asks for a crosswise fold. So what you're going to do is, after you lay the glue side up, go ahead and fold it crosswise like this. Okay, and then place the pattern pieces according to the layout instructions. So you go ahead and take care of all of the cutting and get your pattern pieces ready, and then I'll meet you at the ironing station and I'll show you how to iron your interfacing onto the pattern pieces. So I'll meet you at the ironing station. Okay, to iron our interfacing onto the facing pieces, I want to make sure you have all of your pieces. You're going to need your facing front and your 2 facing backs out of your main fabric. You're also going to need these 3 pieces out of your interfacing fabric. Now, before we iron the interfacing onto the pattern or the fabric, what we're going to do is we're going to trim off some of the interfacing, and the reason we're doing that is because when we place the interfacing on top of the fabric, it's going to be even all the way around. We're going to trim away some of this so that we don't create bulk in the area of the seam allowance. So we're just going to trim away a little bit. So on the long curved edge, let's trim away about a quarter, maybe a quarter of an inch. And then we're going to do the same thing on, let's do it on the back or the center back. Just trim off about a quarter of an inch. Okay? And then you're going to do the same thing with your front piece. Just trim off about a quarter of an inch on that long curved edge. And then we're going to trim off about a quarter on that side. Okay? Then we're going to take these pieces. I have my front interfacing, and I'm going to place it with the textured side, the glue side, down. Now I have my fabric pieces, these fabric facings, they're faced with the wrong side up. So I'm looking at the wrong sides. So I'm going to take the interfacing and with the glue side, place it down on top of that fabric. Okay? And you're going to do the same thing with the two back interfacing pieces. Place it with the glue side down right on top. And I have this towel on top of the ironing board so that you guys can see, since I'm using light fabric this time. Not sure if that was a good idea. I think I'll have to make sure I use a darker fabric when I'm doing the tutorials. So what we're going to do next is you're going to need a spray bottle unless your iron has a spray function. Mine has the sprayer. So what we're going to do is go ahead and spray the interfacing. If you have a water bottle, you'll just spray it with your water bottle. We're going to wet it. And then you're going to take your press cloth and place it on top. And with your steam on, you're just going to press. Maybe 5 seconds in one area and then move to the next. Just making sure you're covering all of the area of the interfacing. And make sure that you use your press cloth when doing this, because you don't want to chance getting the glue onto your iron. Although the glue is face down against the fabric, you just want to be careful. And we just want to make a good habit of using our press cloth anyway. Okay, then we're going to check it. And you just check to make sure there are no bubbles. If you see bubbles, then you'll go ahead and do it again. Make sure your edges are not lifting. If they are, go ahead and press again. So just kind of check all 3 pieces and they should be fine. What I will do sometimes is turn it over and press on the other side. And if your fabric is still wet, just go ahead and press. If you're using a fabric that's dry clean only, then you will want to use the sew-in interfacing. Instead of the fusible with, where we have to use steam. Okay, so we should be good. Now these pieces are ready when that time comes in the instruction to apply the interfacing to the top, to the waist of the skirt. Now we have done this ahead of time. When we start sewing the pattern or the skirt, as you're reading the instructions from the instruction guide, you will see that this step comes later. I like to do this ahead of time so that when that step comes for us to sew this in, the interfacing is already done. So I include the interfacing as part of my preparation step whenever I'm doing my projects. And I suggest you do that if you like, or you can wait until the time comes and do it later. So we're ready to go to the sewing machine, so I will meet you there. We're ready to construct our skirt. So we're going to need our skirt front, our 2 skirt back pieces, your 2 back interfacing pieces that have already been interfaced, your 1 front interfacing, and your zipper that has already been prepared and ironed. Now, for those of you who are just joining me in the course, there are going to be instructions, or we're going to be doing things, constructing this skirt that have already been taught in projects number 1 and 2. So if you need to go back there, then I suggest you do that so that you can understand what's going on as we're continuing to sew. This is especially for those of you who are very new to sewing. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward. So let's grab our skirt front piece, which is the one with the fold, and we're going to put the back pieces aside. And we're going to start by constructing, or by pinning, our darts. Now remember, the darts are the little triangles that we transferred onto the fabric. And what they do is they build shape into the garment so that it fits you in the areas where it's supposed to fit and creates curves for you. So what we're going to do is, starting with one dart at a time, you're going to fold the dart in half, just like this. So starting at the point, grab the point and put a pin there. And remember, at the point we drew a little line so that when we are stitching we will know exactly where to stop. Now for this next part, pay attention, because it takes practice. So you're going to fold it in half, and then you're going to take a pin and you're going to insert the pin on this side and turn it over to see if it came out on the line. So when you insert it on this side, insert it on that dart line, the dart leg, which is the line, turn it over and make sure it's on the line on the other side. If it is, you're good. Then continue to go down, looking to see where you think the middle may be, and then go ahead and pin, turn it over. And mine is not exactly on the line on the other side, so I'm going to just move the pin out just out of that layer and move it over to where it needs to be, and it's on the line. Okay, so it's kind of a little game you play, the dart game, where you're sticking or piercing it on one side and seeing if it's going to come out on the other side, and if it doesn't, you have to just adjust until it's in the right place, and then it comes out on both sides, so you have to start over. So just play the game until you get it, and there you have it. Okay, so, and you use as many pins as necessary, whatever's comfortable for you. So go ahead and turn on your machine, and we're going to use a straight stitch at a 2.5 length, and we're starting at the widest end, and we're going to sew down toward the point. And when we get just maybe a few stitches from that point, we're going to turn our stitch length down to a 1, and I'll tell you why when we get down there. So go ahead and insert your fabric at the wide dart, and you're going to place it right on that line. If you can't see mine, then hopefully you can see yours. I can see it, so just go ahead and place it on that line. Make sure you move your pins when you get to them. Go ahead and backstitch and stitch following that line. That's going to be your focal point. The line, the dart leg that we drew, that's going to be your focal point. So just follow that line all the way down. And you're getting closer to the edge. I'm going to remove this pin, but remember, we have that line as our guideline as to where to stop. So as you get closer, let's turn it down to a 1. And when you turn it to a 1, I'm on the edge of this fabric. You're going to sew right on the edge of the fabric, right on the edge up to that dot, that line, and stop. When you get to that line, just stop, don't go any further, and don't backstitch. Okay, go ahead and remove your needle. Leave the long tail and go ahead and clip away. I put my finger in there so that I don't have to try to pull the threads apart. And then you're going to take your thread and you're going to knot it twice, 2 or 3 times. And this is going to keep that thread from opening, but the tiny stitches help to keep it from unraveling too. So that's your very first dart. All right, and then when you open it out, that's what you get. Okay, Now you're going to go ahead and you're going to do the same thing to all of your darts. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 on your one front piece, and then on each back piece you have 2 darts. So go ahead and sew all of your darts, and then meet me again at the ironing station and I'll show you how we press our darts. Okay, we're ready to press our darts. You should have, this is the front, the skirt front, and I have my 4 darts sewn in. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to press the darts toward the center of the skirt. And I'm going to show you how to do that 2 ways. The first way requires a new tool. And this is the sleeve, the tailor's sleeve, but the one that I would like to tell you about is the tailor's ham. And it's the same thing. It's this roll of fabric that's filled with something that's really sturdy. I'm not sure what's inside, but the tailor's ham is shaped like a ham you get from the grocery store. That's what the tailor's ham is shaped like, but it's the same thing. And what you will do is you will take the ham, and I'm just going to use my sleeve, and you would take the dart point and you would place it right on the curve, and the dart right on the curve, so that when you press, you would press the dart toward the center of the skirt, and you've got that dart point right there on the curve so that you're not pressing it flat. So that's the way you would use your tailor's ham. And I'm just going to use my sleeve board and I'll demonstrate it for you. So again, press it or place it here on the curve. Place it right there just to the tip of your dart. Okay? Just to the tip. Then go ahead and do the same thing with your next dart. Right at the curve. Then we're going to do the other side, pressing in the opposite direction toward the center of your skirt. Remember, just to the tip, and your dart should be right on the edge of that ham. We're building in the shape for the skirt. Then we're going to turn it over to the right side and do the same thing. Making sure the dart is going in that direction toward the front, and you should be using your press cloth. I forget sometimes. Just make sure you use that, especially on the right side of your fabric. Going just to the tip. Making sure it's on the edge for the curve. Okay, make sure it's on the curve and your dart is pressed or in the direction going toward the center of your skirt. And one last dart. And then you have all 4 of your darts pressed, okay? And that's what they will look like, okay? Now, I'm going to grab a back piece and show you the other method that you could use. And you can use this if you don't have a tailor's ham. And what you would do, oh, I forgot to mention to you guys on the skirt front pieces, before you press your darts to one side or the other, go ahead and press your darts flat. It's just like with pressing a seam in your garment. You're going to press the dart flat, just to the tip. just to the tip of that dart. Press it flat first, and then you'll go and press it to one side or toward the center. Just to that tip. Okay, now if you don't have a tailor's ham, then you just have to do it with the flat method. It's not the best because we're trying to build in the shape and the curve, but I did it that way for years when I didn't even know about a tailor's ham. So what you're going to do with the back pieces is you're going to press the darts toward the back, the center of the skirt, and that's where you have this little mark for your zipper stop. Okay, so go ahead and press toward the back, not going over the tip. Okay, just stop right at the tip. You're going to do the same thing with the other. Just there. And then turn it over to the right side, and you're going to do the same thing. Going just to the tip. And that's what you will do if you don't have the pressing ham or the tailor's ham. Okay, so go ahead and do that to the other back piece, and then we're going to go to the sewing machine and install our invisible zipper using the invisible zipper foot this time so that you can see how that works. I'll meet you at the sewing machine. Now that we have pressed our darts, we are ready to install the zipper. Now, in project number 1, I taught you how to do your prep work to prepare your skirt back piece for the zipper. So I've gone ahead and done that. For those of you who are just joining me, you can go and check out project number 1 where you learn how to install an invisible zipper with a regular zipper foot, and you'll hear all the details. So I'll just give you a refresher in words for those of you who've already watched it. Go ahead and stitch the back seam of your skirt together. Then you're going to stitch from the bottom up to that dot. Now remember, we have the dot that we transferred from the pattern piece, and in project number 1 I had you to measure down an inch and make another dot or an X, and that's where we're going to stop the stitching. So stitch from the bottom of the skirt up to that dot, then you're going to change to a basting stitch, which is the longest stitch on your machine, and you're going to baste from that point up to the top of your skirt. Then you're going to finish your seams. And what I have done is I've serged my seams at the dot, that second dot that we made after we measured down an inch. I went ahead and snipped right up to the stitching line, and then I finished both seam allowances together below that point, and above that point I pressed the seams open and then serged the seam allowances individually so that I can insert my zipper. This fabric that I'm using sheds terribly, so I needed to make sure that all of these seam allowances were finished. So then you would go ahead and make sure you measure from the top edge of your seam allowance down 5/8 of an inch on both sides, and then you would place your zipper with the plastic stop just at that mark. Okay, then you would pin your zipper to your seam allowance, and then you would sew your zipper on. Again, for detailed instructions and a pictorial, video of how that's done, you go ahead and look at project number 1 again. So I have my zipper foot attached, and I'm going to take, this is looking at the skirt from the back, the right side. So I'm going to take the right side of the zipper, and I'm going to place it into, let's turn the machine on, I'm going to place it into the left groove of the zipper foot. Let me move that over a little bit. Okay, I'm going to place the coil of the zipper into the left groove. I'm going to lower my needle and the presser foot, and then I'm going to stitch at a 2.5, back stitching first, And what's going to happen is there's a groove under the zipper foot that I showed you guys in the introduction, and it's going to just take the coil and sew right next to the coil without me having to do anything except remove the pins as it goes along. This makes it so much easier because I don't have to make sure I'm staying on the edge of that fold. And again, just like when we installed it with the regular zipper foot, you're going to stop right at that zipper pull and back stitch. You're going to snip your threads on both ends. Okay, and then we're going to close the zipper. Make sure everything's okay and it's looking good. So we're going to open it and pin. Now this time we don't have to make a mark because we don't have a horizontal or a seam that's intersecting the zipper. Remember last time we had to go and make a mark to make sure we were lining up the seam, but this time we don't have to do that. So we're just going to go ahead and pin this side of the zipper to the seam allowance, and then we're going to do the same thing. Sew this side, and then we're going to attach the facings to the top of the skirt. So go ahead and finish your zipper. If you don't have a zipper foot, then go ahead and sew in your invisible zipper using your regular zipper foot as I taught you to do in project number 1. So if you need to go back and get a refresher, go ahead and do that. And then meet me back here and we're going to apply the facings to the top of the skirt at the waist. All right, we're ready to attach the facing to the waist area of the skirt. So what we're looking at is the back of the skirt, and you will need to attach your skirt back to your skirt front at the side edges. And you will use a straight stitch at a 2.5 length. After you have sewn together the side edges, go ahead and use whichever finishing technique you want and finish those edges. After you have finished the edges, go ahead and press your seams toward the back of the skirt. Okay? And then once you've done that, you're going to prepare your facing pieces. So you're going to take your 2 back facing pieces and attach them to your front facing, matching the notches with the right sides facing each other. After you've done that, you're going to finish the long curved edge of your facing using your choice of finishing technique. And then you're going to sew in a line of guide stitching, and that is a 5/8 inch stitch, straight stitch on your machine on both ends of your facing. Then you're going to press over to where that stitching is showing on the inside, on the wrong side. Now, after you've done that, we're going to pin it to the top of the skirt. So turn your skirt right side out. And unzip it. Turn it over to where the front is facing you. Then take your facing and place it face down on your skirt. Now, you have 2 notches on your skirt front and you have 2 notches on your facing front. You're going to match those up and pin, starting your pinning in that area. Then you're going to go over to one side of your skirt and you're going to match the side seam of your skirt with the side seam of your facing and pin. And do the same thing on the other side. Then you're going to go to the back edge of your skirt. Now, you have the facing folded over and you have the back of the skirt with the zipper tape folded over. What you're going to do is open out both. and pin those. Okay? Do the same thing on the other edge. Open it out and pin those together. Now we're going to go back in between, starting at the front. So go over to one side where your darts are. And you're going to take your dart and press it flat, and you're going to insert a pin there. And that's to control the darts. When you're sewing, you don't want the darts to flip in the wrong direction. So pin both darts down. And do the same thing on the other side. And going to the back, you're going to do the same thing on both sides in the back, on both backs or pieces. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to insert a 5/8 inch straight stitch at a 2.5 length from one edge all the way, from one back edge all the way around to the other back edge. So let's do that now. So insert your skirt at the 5/8 inch line. And we're going to backstitch first. And then stitch all the way around at a speed that's comfortable for you. And when you reach the notches, just check under. We pin them down, but still always check just to make sure they're pointed in the correct direction. And when you get to your side edges, check on the bottom to make sure that seam is pointed in the correct direction. Now, when you remove your pin from your facing, what you can do to make sure this doesn't flip and go in the wrong direction is, what I do is I just take 2 fingers and hold it down. And once it's there, I move my fingers. Darts are flat, I'm okay. Make sure you check to see if your edges are even. Again, check your side seam. Control that seam allowance and continue sewing. And backstitch. Okay. And we have that seam in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have to understitch. But before we understitch, we're going to go ahead and trim this seam allowance. So grab your scissors. And I want you to go ahead and just trim through both layers, trim off about maybe half of this seam allowance. Okay, and then we're going to understitch. So you go ahead and trim that, and I'll trim mine. And we learned this also in project number 1 when we made our circle skirt. Or was it project number 2 with the maxi skirt? I can't remember now, but I do know that we learned this technique, so we are going to do it again. And I'll actually go ahead and demonstrate it again. Okay. So what you're going to do, now that that's trimmed, is you're going to place your facing and your skirt at the needle plate, and you want the seam allowance to point toward your facing. Okay, so you're going to place it under your needle, and we're going to stitch just close or to the previous stitching that we did. So I would say somewhere in the middle. Okay, and it's just a straight stitch. So back stitch first, and you're going to stitch from one end all the way to the other end, making sure when you get to the darts, you're controlling so that that dart, this little tail, doesn't flip this way. You want to keep it flat in the direction that it's going. So use your finger, and when you get there, what you can do, what I like to do to make sure it's staying flat, is I'll lift my presser foot, press it down, and then lower my presser foot. And this is where you really need to take your time for these little extra special or little extra tips, so you don't rush through it. And as you're pressing, doing this understitch, just pull your fabric in opposite directions just to make sure you're not sewing in any folds. And when you get to that seam allowance, the same as you did with your darts, you're going to press this down with one finger. And then as you get to that seam allowance, lift it, flatten it, and press it back down. Now, these darts are pointed in this direction, so it's going to be easy to sew over those and not worry about them flipping in the wrong direction. So you just sew right over those. Up on more darts pointed in the opposite direction that we're going, so just make sure you control it with your finger. Coming up on the side seam, and this time it's pointed in the direction that we're going, so we don't have to stop. Back stitch, and we're done with our understitch. Okay, now the next step, you're going to fold this back over your facing, and then you're going to fold it down. Okay, and all the way around you're going to press. So you're going to go to your ironing station, you're going to press that flat, and you're going to fold this over, and you'll feel the ridge, so it kind of folds naturally. So press that down at your pressing station all the way to the other end. When you get over here, you're going to fold that over, fold it down, and right where that seam is, you're going to go ahead and press. So go ahead and press your facing down, and then meet me back here and I'll show you how we're going to anchor this down onto the seams. Here we have our facing sewed onto the top of our skirt. The next step is securing the facing to the skirt so that it's not lifting or unfolding as you're wearing the skirt. Now, last project, or on project number 1 with the circle skirt, what we did to secure the end of the yoke to the zipper tape is we did a, what was it, a whip stitch with a hand needle and thread. I'm going to show you a little technique where you can do that with the sewing machine. It's quicker and it looks very neat. I'll show you what it looks like. I did this one with my machine ahead of time just so you guys could see what it looked like. But just as with the whip stitch, it's a very clean finish. So I'm going to show you how to do that with the sewing machine. So we have our facing folded over. So what you're going to do is you're going to open it out and you're going to fold it backwards. And see this fold on the facing? You're going to place that fold just to the right side of the zipper tape. Let's do that again. So it's folded in. You're going to open it out, fold it with the right sides facing, turn it over, and the fold on the facing, you will place it just to the right of the zipper tape. Okay, making sure that everything is flat. And then you're going to take a pin. First, make sure that the fold is just right next to the right of the, let me do that again, to the right of your zipper teeth. Okay, then pin. And what we're going to do is we're going to stitch with a straight stitch from the top edge to the bottom, and we're going to stitch just to the right of this stitching. If you will take your finger and press like this, you will feel the zipper teeth. So the zipper teeth are just to the left side of the stitch, or just at the stitch. So we're going to sew to the right side of that stitch just to make sure we're not touching or getting too close to the zipper teeth. So go ahead and insert your fabric under your needle and get to a position where your needle is just to the right of that stitching. Okay, then you're going to back stitch, and then you're going to stitch forward. Oh, let's get that started. Sometimes you have to give it a little push. Back stitch. Okay, now you're going to take your scissors and you're going to trim off just this side, not the side that's finished. If you finished your edge, you're just going to trim off a little bit of that, and then you're going to trim the corner, and that's just removing some of the bulk so that when we turn it back right side out, we don't have as much fabric inside of there. And there you have a nice clean finish. Okay, and that's it. So our next step is we're going to stitch in the ditch to secure the band or the facing even more. And I've done some of that ahead of time, and you can see the stitches here, but well, maybe you can see them because I used a coordinating thread this time because I don't want the darker color to show on the right side of my skirt. So what we're going to do is turn your skirt right side out. And at a side seam, you're going to place it under your needle and find that spot. You're going to be stitching right in the center of that seam. Backstitch. And then stitch forward only as far as your facing goes. And you can feel it with your finger, so it ends about right here, and we're only going to stitch that far, and then stitch or back stitch. and that secures your face. To hem your skirt, I want you to go ahead and do a guide stitch on the edge, the bottom edge of the skirt, and that is a 5/8 inch straight stitch all the way around the bottom edge of your skirt. Then go ahead and finish that edge, and then you're going to go to your ironing station and fold over that edge, making sure that you see the guide stitching on the wrong side. Okay, you're going to press that all the way around, and once you have that pressed, you can go to your sewing machine and you can do a straight stitch along the raw edge, the finished edge here, not near the fold, but near the finished edge. You can do a straight stitch on your machine, or you can do a slip stitch, which is what I taught you to do in project number 1 for your circle skirt. So you choose whichever one you want to do, and then your hem will be done. Well, we are done with another project. We have finished our straight skirt. So far, we have completed 3 skirts in the beginner's sewing course. And if you've been following along and if you've been completing these skirts along with me, I'm sure you're feeling quite accomplished, and you should. And I hope you're having fun. I hope you're enjoying the course and that you're able to follow along and that you're learning a lot. I've heard feedback from several of you saying that you're enjoying the tutorials, and that makes me feel good. So I'm happy, and I'm just grateful to be able to do this. So I just want to tell you guys I'll be back again next week with a new project number 4, and I hope you will join me. And until then, remember, when you live in your design, it is from there that you shine. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.